My manager at that job ended up being a creep. He had one of those adult baby fetishes. I basically would go to like my film classes and stuff, and then afterwards I would go and work on like child exploitation cases. Somebody else's success or beauty or whatever does not determine your own failure. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Now What podcast. I am your host, Brooke Sabey, and today is episode 3 of the podcast. I'm super excited for this one because it's a little bit more story time heavy, and I think you guys are going to be able to just get to know me better from this episode, but it's also hopefully will really help you guys. It's all about the question of where do you see yourself in 5 years? I hate that question. I kind of previewed that in the previous podcast of how much I hate that question. Because you start hearing it like probably around like middle school, even when you're little, like what do you want to be when you grow up? There's less pressure when you're a child, but as you get older, you're like, oh damn, like I should probably have everything planned out for my entire life. And that question really started to stress me out in college. And you don't have to have your whole life planned out. Like, honestly, I used to take that question so seriously of like, okay, by the age of 13, I needed to have my entire life planned out, where I'm going to high school, where I'm going to college, who I'm marrying, when I'm getting married, when I'm having kids, what I'm going to do for work, when I'm going to die, basically. And if it doesn't go to that plan, then everything is just gone to shit then, basically. And it would stress me out all the time. And I think everyone kind of feels like they have to have their entire life figured out by the time they're like a teenager, and that's just not true. Even in your 20s, like I think that's when the pressure of this question got really serious for me, of just like, holy shit, I still don't really have like a solid plan of what's going on. And you don't need that, because you don't need to, like, whatever I wrote 5 years ago, I would love to see, or like whatever I said 5 years ago, I would love to see, because I definitely did not think I'd be sitting here. But basically, the more rigid that you are with like, this is how my life has to go, I honestly think it opens you up to less opportunities than if you just go with the flow. So there's no shame in answering that question and saying, I don't know. I really don't know, and it doesn't matter. Like, I'll just see where life takes me, because that has served me more than being really rigid with, okay, this is like my 5-year plan. It has to go like this. If it doesn't, then I'm so, but yes, basically, it's okay to not have everything figured out. And honestly, I think you're better off if you just allow yourself to figure out as you go what suits you best. Because whatever you thought was best for you 5 years ago is not what is probably the best for you now. Let's just get into the episode. So I know that not everybody pursues traditional education, goes off to college. That's totally fine and completely normal. Everybody's path is different. I chose to go from high school to college immediately. And when you make that decision, when you like are deciding your college and like where you're going to go, you hear the question of like, oh, what are you going to like, what's your major? Like, what are you going to major in? Like, what are you going to do? You kind of have to decide at 18 years old what you are going to do for the rest of your life, right? So you start hearing that question of where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I don't regret what major I picked in college, but I definitely like had a better grasp of my likes and dislikes probably like halfway, almost like fully through college. And like, that's too late to switch anything. I was already like dedicated to what I wanted to do. So I think that question of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, like really started to stress me out, because what I was like learning in school and kind of like putting energy towards was not super what I was like passionate about anymore. To be honest, I went to school and I became a film major, and I still obviously love film and like content creating and everything about that. But I started developing like a really big interest in like psychology and like cybersecurity from the other classes I was taking. And there wasn't really like a route for me to pursue that unless after college I went back to school to get a degree in those. And like, so that question, where do you see yourself in 5 years, really started stressing me out, because I kept seeing myself working in a industry that I wasn't getting my degree in. And I was like, I'm by the age of like 18, you really start getting that question drilled in your head, and it started getting really scary for me. And I don't feel like I showed that very well. I definitely gave off this like persona that like I've had my entire life basically figured out by the age of like 12, because I started doing YouTube at like 12 and 13, and then obviously that's now like my job now as an adult. But when I started making like content when I was like 12 or 13, it was never in my head that I was going to be doing this full time. That was never the goal. My goal was to just, make stuff I was happy with and share it with others. Like becoming a full-time content creator, like that really wasn't as normal also back then in like 2014 as it is now. Like it's a very like real career that most people know about. Like if I was in middle school and I was like, I'm gonna be a YouTuber when I grow up, people would have been to be like, what even is that? So that was never in the back of my head that I was gonna be doing this as like a job. But obviously, like if you didn't know me growing up, or like you just met me now, and I was like, oh yeah, I've been making YouTube videos since I was 12, and like I do that now as an adult, people are like, wow, like you knew what you were gonna be when you were 12 years old. Like you basically like planned out your entire life from like your childhood and you actually stuck to it. Like that's awesome. But like that's not true, because I started doing that, never even saw it as a career, went to school, thought I was gonna basically work for like Netflix or work as like an editor for some other company. Then I started getting interested in like cybersecurity and like psychology. So I picked up a cybersecurity minor. I actually worked in a cyber crimes unit where I worked on child exploitation cases. That took a massive toll on me. But I did that for 3 years in college. So then I thought I was gonna go work for the FBI. And then I was like, no, I don't want to do that, but maybe I'll still pursue cybersecurity and work somewhere, maybe in like DC and like politics or something. And then I was like, well, what if I went and got my master's in psychology and became a therapist? Like, this was not point A to point B. Like, I was all over the place in growing up. And I also quit doing content creation for a large chunk in there that like, I wasn't even doing it for a period of time. But I think when people just look at it from the surface, they're like, she has had her life planned out and knew what she was doing since she was a child. Like, you're so lucky. Like, I don't even know what I'm passionate about now. And I feel lost. And like, I still don't know what I want to do. And I'm in my 20s and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm with you too. I know on paper it looks like this, but like, there are days that I'm like, I still don't know what I'm doing. And I think that that's just like a big issue with like, where do you see yourself in 5 years is like, you think everybody else like has these phenomenal answers and like knows what they're doing. And you're like, holy like, I'm just going to give a BS answer because I really don't know. And the reality is that like nobody around you really knows what they're doing. And even people like myself that I know I come off as I have everything figured out and I know what I'm doing. Like there are some days that I wake up and I'm like, holy I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I'm super lost and I'm upset maybe with like the type of content I'm posting on YouTube. You know, I feel stuck on like another platform. I'm alone doing this. So that's a whole other issue too. So I don't feel like I have a big outlet of like to talk to people about these issues that I'm like stewing with. And like, even the people that seem like they got it all together and they're happy and they're content and it's just like sunshine and rainbows and brand deals all the time. It's really not. I can't speak for other content creators, but I definitely feel like what I'm experiencing is not like a niche thing. So that also goes back to not comparing yourself to like people online, especially content creators. You're like, wow, like they look like they got it all figured out and, you know, life is great for them. And like, I'm not saying that that's like, I don't like my life and I'm very like happy with where I'm at, but like, it's not like that all the time. And I think like we have down days just like everybody else. And no, I have not had my life figured out since I was 12, 13 years old. I wish it was like that, but it definitely was like a roller coaster. Even if you are not comparing yourself against content creators and you don't have any like desire to get involved in this industry, I think like the typical like more corporate angle of this is LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is like still so, if you're not comparing yourself against people on TikTok and Instagram, you're comparing yourself against your connections on LinkedIn. And I'm not even in like a traditional like work environment, but LinkedIn makes me feel bad. And so that's another thing. Like, you go on there and it's just people just like boasting about their like professional accomplishments, and you feel so behind. So and so got a new certificate, so and so like got a new promotion, like they got a new job, they moved cities, they did this, and you're like, wait, like I feel like I should be doing something, like I feel so behind, but like it's all a bunch of BS. Everybody is just posting the highlights. You're not as behind as you think you are. This is coming from somebody who I've been told constantly, like, I wish I was like you. I wish that I had my life figured out when I was 12 or 13. I don't. And neither do these people on LinkedIn, and neither do the TikTokers, and neither do the YouTubers. So it's okay. Like, I promise you, it's all good. And you're not as like far behind as you think you are, because I'll get in these like spirals where I'm like, I'm so behind in life. I feel like I need to be on like Forbes 40 or like 30 under 30 like tomorrow. On top of like remembering that not everybody is ahead of you in life, and like you're not as behind as you think you are, and like not everybody has everything figured out like it seems like it when you go on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, is remembering that yeah, there will still be some people that are technically more successful, you know, ahead in life for their age, whatever, doing cooler things in your opinion. I mean, you can't compete with everybody, because if you go into a room with a bunch of people, you probably will not be the most successful. You probably will not be the wealthiest. You probably will not be the most pretty. And that's okay. Maybe you will be. Sometimes you won't be. And that's okay, because there's always going to be people that are technically more successful, more wealthier, more beautiful, whatever. And that doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because somebody else's success or beauty or whatever does not determine your own failure. Like, just because somebody else is beautiful does not mean that that makes you less beautiful. Or if somebody else has, you know, more success, that doesn't mean that you're a failure. Like, everybody's life path is different, and it really like comparing yourself does not help with anything. And just kind of reminding yourself that like it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Like, it really doesn't matter. And I really had to like the quote of just somebody else's success does not determine your failure really, really helped me, especially in like an industry that's super competitive, like social media. Like, you can look at numbers and really get down on yourself that you're like, damn, like this person that I've deemed a competitor of mine is doing so much better. What the fuck? Like, I deserve, and then just kind of like get in this like poo-poo spot of feeling bad about yourself and feeling not good enough. But I'm like, okay, just because somebody else is having a great time right now on YouTube and is, you know, hitting numbers that I would love to be hitting, that doesn't mean that like I'm this YouTuber and that, you know, I should just delete my channel and I'm a failure. Like, I bet people probably compared themselves to me when I was like at a really good spot with my YouTube during COVID, and was like, what the like I deserve that, and like felt bad about themselves. So it's just, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And somebody else's success does not determine your failure in any industry. And like, I really had to learn that, because I allowed that to make me feel bad, and like go back to the whole problem of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and spiraling of being like, well, now what I have planned isn't working out, and I feel like a failure, and nothing's going to plan. Like, they all just kind of like mesh together. And as soon as you just kind of release all of that, and you're like, it is what it is. As long as I do my best and I put all my energy into something, and it doesn't matter how so-and-so is doing in comparison to me. Like, I am my own person. I am on my own journey. So that was a huge thing for me to learn. It's just like, comparison is evil. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I know it's easier said than done, but it'll ruin you if you allow that to ruin you, truthfully. And I think I had kind of like battled that issue all throughout growing up, and it just like really hit hard in my 20s when I think I became a lot more harder on myself. As I get older, like I think I've gotten a lot more harsh on like the expectations I have for myself, which is fine. It's like setting goals is fine, and pushing yourself is fine, but not to a point where you're setting like unrealistic standards to the point where like I have to be performing at 100% and doing great all the time, or I'm a fucking failure because so and so seems like they are. Like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So it's never a good idea. It will ruin you, I promise. And I really struggled with that. And I think I've kind of like reeled it back in, but I'm not gonna lie, like I definitely still struggle with comparison a lot of the times. So don't do it. But anyway, circling back to the whole point of that, allowing yourself to be more flexible and not rigid with what you want to do in life and where you see yourself has honestly opened a lot more doors for me, and I think most people. And because one, it's kind of taken off the pressure of like everything has to go to plan. If it doesn't, I'm a failure. Two, it is what it is. I'm gonna allow whatever's gonna happen, and it allows you to be more accepting of other things coming into your life that may serve you better than whatever the you had planned. And once I started doing that, like so much anxiety went down. A lot more great things started happening. Like I stopped being so hard on myself, and not hard on myself and like I'm like being lazy, hard on myself and like setting like unrealistic expectations for myself and being bummed out when they didn't work out. So focusing more on my effort versus like the goal, I think, is what made the change. So anyway, I went to college, like I said, for film. Had this whole idea that I was going to be like working for Netflix and all this stuff. Ended up getting a cybersecurity internship my sophomore year of college because the cyber crimes unit that I worked for was in the city that my college was in, and my ex-boyfriend at the time lived in the city where my college was. So I was like, oh, perfect. I can like get this cybersecurity internship and then, stay for the summer in the city that he lives in and like be able to be with him. But I basically got this cybersecurity internship for an ex-boyfriend, which I think is hilarious because obviously it's an ex-boyfriend. And I did this foolishly for a guy, but it ended up being like one of the coolest opportunities I ever had. And so I'm not gonna like go into detail. I can totally make like a whole separate podcast episode about this, what I did. This like 21 Jump Street situation I had going on. I basically would go to like my film classes and stuff, and then afterwards I would go and work on like child exploitation cases, like writing like search warrants, and like it was a lot of the stuff I was seeing was pretty nuts, and I definitely think it took a toll on me, and I couldn't talk about anything that I was seeing while working at this job because I was like legally sworn while like they were active cases, so I couldn't say anything. So that also kind of took a toll on me when I would see something like I so desperately wanted to talk about and I like legally could not. So anyway, we had the CIA and like the FBI come in and talk to us trying to like recruit us after we graduated. And I was like, I'm going to go work for the FBI. I was so like dead on that that's what I was going to be doing. Like at this point, I wasn't doing YouTube anymore. And I was like, I'm going to go work for the FBI, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, wait, this is taking a toll on you as a college student. What makes you think you can do a lifetime of this profession? So I was like, maybe this is not a good idea. So then I was like, maybe I'll go do cybersecurity at a different job. I got really into it. So I was like, F the film thing. I'm going to like go into cybersecurity like full time. And then the ex-boyfriend at the time basically was like, you should go back to YouTube. And I was like, haha, like, no, I'm not doing that. But it was in the back of my head always. I'm gonna be honest, like even when I wasn't doing it, it was always there. And I was like, should I? And I was like, no, I've moved on. I'm in college now. I'm like going to be like a working woman. Like I don't have time for this. But it was always in the back of my head because it was something that I was passionate about, something I cared about that I'd quit for dumbass reasons. So it was there. And then finally I had a friend push me to upload a YouTube video. She was like, you should just go back. And it was funny because this was a friend that I wasn't like, I was close with, but it wasn't like my like BFF. I don't even know what she said to me, but she said something that just clicked. And I was like, you know what? You're fucking right. Like, I should just go back. So went back to YouTube, never with the intentions of it being a full-time thing. I just kind of was like, let's see where this goes. First video I post after not being on YouTube for literally, I think it was like 3-4 years, got 1 million views. That's like unheard of. And so I took it as a sign. I was like, maybe I did something right here. So I still like didn't have the idea that I was going to be doing this like as a career. I just was like, let's see how far I can take this. So then as everybody is starting to talk about, you know, jobs after graduating, I'm here like being a cybersecurity 21 Jump Street YouTuber, film student. Like I was all over the place. And all of my friends were going to Chicago. And so I made a plan. I was like, I'm going to go to Chicago. I'm going to get a full-time job after college somewhere in Chicago so I can be with all my friends. I can still do YouTube on the side. It's not going to be like a career thing for me. And, you know, I'm going to like find some job that I really like and yada, yada, yada. And I thought for a while I was going to be a cybersecurity, but then I started getting really like into social media because of the YouTube thing. So I was like, maybe I'll just go do social media for somebody else and I can also do it for myself on the side. So this is a YouTube story time. You guys all know about this. I got a job. I found the job through my college. Like we had like job postings for people like recruiting from our college to like employ students after they graduated and like get internships and stuff. So I didn't find this on Indeed. I didn't find this on some boof website. I found this through my school, the University of Notre Dame, this social media marketing job at the startup company in Chicago. And I got the internship. I did a really good job at the internship. They offered me a full-time position. I was super excited. I was going to move to Chicago, do the social media job for this startup company, and I really liked the people there, and do YouTube. That was the plan. Move with all of my friends. I was super excited. And like had somebody ask me like, oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would have been like, I'm living in Chicago with my friends, working for a startup company doing their social media and their marketing. That's what I would have told you. That is so far off of where I am now. Because obviously if you guys have watched the YouTube video, that guy ended up being my manager at that job ended up being a creep. And he had one of those adult baby fetishes. And he contacted me after I didn't work at the company anymore before I graduated and was trying to get me to be his mommy. Yeah, go check out the YouTube video if you're like, what the are you talking about, Brooke? So I was heartbroken because I felt like that job was like stolen from me. I was like, all of my friends had their internships and stuff, full-time job offers like I got. And mine fell through because my boss had an adult baby fetish. I was heartbroken because I had this super rigid plan of I'm moving to Chicago, I'm doing this is how it's going. And literally like months before I graduated, it all crumbled to the ground. And I had no intention of being a full-time content creator. Even like when I was close to graduating, I was like, I'm gonna go, like, I just felt more comfortable doing the social media marketing for somebody else and moving to Chicago with my friends. It felt more safe. So I was like, what am I going to do? And my mom was the one who was like, I think this is a sign for you to double down on what you're doing for yourself because this is something really weird that happened. And like, maybe the universe is trying to give you a shove that you need to go like 100% in on yourself. And I like, as my whole dream as like a child was to be like a YouTuber. And here I was presented with this opportunity to be a YouTuber and I was pissed because I was so rigid with my thinking. I was like, this was not the plan. What the f***? And I felt like I was so lost and hard on myself. And I got really upset for like the end of my college experience because of this. And I kind of allowed my own rigidness to spoil like what should have been a special time with my friends and everything. So by me being so hard on myself with that and like not going to plan like I thought, I kind of like ruined for myself. So there was nothing I could do about it, right? Being negative about what happened wasn't going to do anything. So that's why I was talking about that, like, by being so rigid, it closes you off to things, like whether that's like opportunities or just like happiness. I was making myself miserable because shit wasn't going to plan. And now as I've become more like it is what it is and embrace like going with the flow, a lot more happy and less like depressed when shit doesn't go to plan. So there you go. Like there's an example of like something that happened to me. Like that's just a very small example. I think my entire life I've always been like this, but I definitely like allowed that specific situation to really eat me alive, which sucked. It wasn't my fault. It was a very weird thing to happen. But obviously, if you guys have been watching me for a while, that's very in character for me, sadly. But yeah, I was extremely lost and extremely confused and extremely angry because everyone around me that I deeply cared about seemed like they had their life figured out, that they had their jobs lined up after college that were so different from mine, that they were, you know, moving to a city that I wasn't going to. And like, I was just trying to force this plan that wasn't going to work. And I was taking it as like a loss when I really should have been reframing it as a redirection. So, I mean, like everybody knows that like every loss is really just a redirection. Like when one door closes, another one opens up. And I was pissed that that door closed. And I was angry and I was bitter and I let myself just sulk when the end of college should be a very special time for you to celebrate your accomplishment and be with the people that you're not going to probably live with ever again, all around. And it took me till my 20s to realize to like really, I had always heard that like when one door closes, another one opens. I was like, whatever. Because I was so fucking hard on myself of like everything has to go to plan. And then when it does it for me, that I, one, blame myself when this is a clear example of something that was so out of my control. And two, I feel like maybe something that is so minor. Like that thing that happened has barely impacted me now. But at the time, it felt like my entire life was crumbling. That I was the biggest failure. That how did I go to school for so long and like get to this point and everything crumbles? Like I was treating it as if my life was over when like at the time it may feel like the world is ending, but it's not. You're making yourself feel like that. And also, it's really not that big of a deal. And also, I was comparing myself against so many people at my school that I was close to. There was a lot of kids also that didn't have jobs lined up after graduation because we were kind of graduating during COVID and like that screwed up a lot of things. So mine was not fucked up from COVID, but I wasn't experiencing something alone. There were a lot of people that probably weren't sharing that like they had lost their like full-time job offers after college, and I lost mine because he was a adult baby fetish man. But anyway, it doesn't really matter why I lost it, but I just felt like I was experiencing something so niche, but it's really normal to graduate college and not have something lined up afterwards or take a gap year or whatever it is. But like, I was just like, no, I can't. And also I think it's an ego thing. I think I had an ego that I was like, no, like, I can't, like, I won't, like, other people can, but I won't do that. Like, you really got to let the ego go. There's nothing wrong with going with the flow and not having a plan. And it's not a shot to your ego if you are just, you know, taking some time to yourself to figure out what you really want. Like, I have too high of expectations for myself and too big of an ego sometimes that's a whole other thing. Your ego will also cut you short if you are so rigid with yourself because of how you come off to others and how other people perceive you, and you have to do certain things because of how other people are perceiving you. That's a whole other issue. So all that bundled up together just kind of like boils back down to like the where do you see yourself in 5 years question. Me 5 years ago, I would have given you an MLA format fucking essay that would have been, I'm going to be, you know, doing all these incredible things, and it kind of taking it as like a way to brag, you know? And now I feel comfortable just saying, I don't really know. I'm going to see where life takes me. Like 5 years ago, my ego would have not let me answer that question with like not having this like grand answer. And now I just kind of accept like I've had cooler things happen to me because I've been more accepting with just going with the flow, you know? And I don't think it was all ego. I think it was also your child insecurity. Like, you don't want to like stand up in front of people and go, I don't know. But like now I'm more secure in myself that I can say that confidently, and I really don't care about how other people perceive me. And that was a long journey itself too of like, I don't really fucking care how people perceive me now. I would have never probably sat down and done a solo podcast 5 years ago out of insecurity because I would be uncomfortable. I'd be like, well, what if I say something stupid? I don't care. I don't care now. Like, and it took me a really long time to get to that point of just, and also therapy. Also therapy. One of the biggest things also my therapist taught me is that whatever feeling you're feeling, your feelings are not you. You're just having a feeling. So when you feel like a failure and you're like, I'm a failure, you're not a failure. You're feeling like a failure. And feelings are temporary. They're like your feelings. You are not identified by your feelings. So if you are having a bad day and you're like, I'm feeling really sad and I'm having a really bad day, like, that doesn't mean that you're like a sad person or a bad person, you know? You don't identify with like the current feelings that you're having. So allowing yourself to just recognize that your feelings are kind of separate from who you are allows them to like pass by, and it allows you to not suppress them, but just kind of be like, yeah, I am feeling like a failure right now. I feel like a loser. And that's okay because I know that feeling is temporary and it doesn't really matter. Tomorrow I probably won't feel like that. But don't suppress it, acknowledge it, and then just kind of let it go. But basically, besides this episode turning into a therapy session, this episode was just kind of to show you that no, somebody who seems like they have had their whole life figured out since they were a young child, they don't. I just told you my whole thought process and redirection, and I thought I was going to be a therapist and work for the FBI at a certain point. And I lost my job because of my boss being an adult baby fetish and like all of this stuff. I have not had my whole life figured out. So somebody who seems like it on the outside really doesn't. So when you see somebody else who seems like they have it all together, they probably don't. So don't compare yourself. It is what it is. And it's okay to say, I don't know what I'm doing in life. Because had I been so rigid, probably wouldn't have a podcast. Me 5 years ago would have never said I was going to have a podcast. And if I was so rigid with myself, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing that. And I probably wouldn't have 5 years ago. I probably didn't have the confidence in myself to actually do this. But by allowing my feelings to not control me, by just taking things more day by day, going with the flow, being more confident in my decisions and not allowing other people's success to or direction to determine mine, like, has opened me up to more blessings and has really just helped me grow as a human being. And if you are like stressed the out and you're like 16 watching this, I feel you, homie. Like, I'm 24. It took me a while to get here, and I still don't think that I'm like this all-knowing being. Like, I'm figuring this out with you guys. So, you know, I may watch this in 4 years and be like, what the were you talking about? But this is just where I'm at right now and how I've kind of, you know, I think grown. I'm not done growing, but I've definitely grown. And just letting life take me where it wants to take me. And I'm here for the ride, and it is what it is. And I'm happy with that. So when somebody asks you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I want you to know, Brooke said it's okay to say, I don't know. Because when somebody asks me that question, I say, I don't know. I'm just going to see where life's going to take me. I'm happy where I am now. I'm taking it day by day. And I'm excited to see where I'll be in 5 years. And that's normally how I answer that question. Because I ain't going to tell nobody my plans. Because the haters will sabotage. No, I'm just kidding. But I really hope this episode was not a ramble. I want to do more like therapy-esque, get deep down into like what my brain is thinking with you guys. But I also don't want to just people to hear this and be like, what the f-? So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this made sense. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you guys did like this episode and you want more kind of like the style, let me know. Leave a comment down below. I'm happy to get deep diving in my brain. It's weird. I'm warning you. But yeah, and if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you get notified every single time I have a new episode. And next week, we are going to be talking about another issue that's very personal to me, and it's about being lonely and how everyone has this narrative that if you have no friends, I don't have no friends, but if you are lacking in friends, you typically are more of a lonely person, that you're the problem. Or if you have lost a lot of friends, then you're the problem. And though that may be true sometimes, there's a lot of times that, some people just thrive being a little bit more lonely. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that is me. I've always been a little bit more of a lonely, shy kid. And I used to see that as a huge flaw, that there was something wrong with me, that, people didn't like me and I wasn't deserving of friends, and just a really dark hole. So we're going to talk about that. And if you're also lonely, hopefully you tune in to kind of hear about my experience with that, and that there's nothing wrong with being by yourself and being a little bit more lonely. But yeah, that also another thing that took me a really long time to learn. I used to see it as a huge flaw, and as that I was a terrible person that nobody wanted to be around because I would maybe had like only 2 friends, and was comparing myself against other people that had these huge friend groups. So we're going to deep dive into my loneliness in the next episode. So if you guys want to hear about that, make sure you come back for their episode 4. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.